little bit about us. Marquee 360 was founded by former Microsoft employees and industry leaders. Our team has 20 plus years in the industry, and our vision is to create solutions to drive growth and enhance your internal processes and operations. So to do that, we bring our best practices to build on your efficiencies and overcome any challenges, bringing productivity to your team and filling in any gaps that the Microsoft Power Platform may not offer. So we can help create a smooth and easy transition to use the product. And just something we're very proud of. We were also Microsoft's finalist for Partner of the Year in Project and Portfolio Management the last 2 years. So again, something our team worked hard at and we're proud of. So our core areas of focus for success are innovation. We take the Microsoft suite and accelerate it, filling in any gaps, like I said, that may not be included on the Power Platform. We just take it to the next level to fine tune it to meet each customer's individual needs. We work side by side with Microsoft's technology team during their development, so our solutions are always kept up to date. Number 2, our customer success and the long-lasting relationships we are building along the way are really key to myself and to our team. So we act as your trusted advisor, make sure you get support from start to finish. And we understand that each customer has their own unique requirements. So we use our learned best practices to design your solution around your individual PMO needs. And then lastly, we understand how important support is when implementing something new. So we assign a dedicated team to cover all the areas of implementation, such as hypercare, after launch support, contracts, etc., so that you're never left hanging, and we're always there to answer any questions or your concerns. I'm going to put my email into the chat, and we're only brushing the surface of what we can do today here at Marquee 360. So if anyone wants their own demo of the whole product lifecycle from start to finish, please reach out. We'd love to do a demo designed specifically for your team. And with that, I'll hand it off to Erin.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Megan. So like Megan said, we work on the Microsoft 365 platform, and this graphic gives you a little bit more of an idea of what that really looks like and what products we're working with. And what we're best at is we have our project accelerators. So we take Microsoft Project for the web and extend the capabilities using the Power Platform, so Power Apps, to give you more capabilities like scoring, risks and issues, things that aren't already out of the box for Project for the Web. And then we bring it together in Teams to give you a more collaborative experience. And we use Power Automate to automate some workflows, some of those manual processes your team might be working on. We can create workflows to just have things happen in the background to give you more time to do the work that matters. And then we also have our Power BI report pack that gives you all your data in one place right out of the box. And with our accelerator, because it's built on the Power Platform, we can also break those functionalities down into one piecemeal apps. So today we'll look at intake. Mia is going to show you guys that. But we can also do just our report back. We could do financials if you need help with budgeting, more functionality there. We have our Financials 360 app, timesheets, any of those processes that your project managers are saying, we can break those down. So you're not having to buy this whole solution that you might not need or you're not ready for. So it just gives our customers exactly what they need at that time. All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mia.
Thanks a lot, Erin and Megan. So today we're really excited to focus on one specific part of the project lifecycle. We're going to show you our app, which we call Intake 360, which focuses on project ideation and how we can submit requests for new projects. So we'll get to take a look at the form and see how the overall process fits into the project lifecycle. There are workflows that are set up to go along with it. So anytime a request is submitted, you get to define how that approval process is going to work. And that way you only have projects that you want to focus on in your portfolio. We'll get to look at all kinds of exciting things like scoring of those intake requests based on business drivers. And then we'll also look at how the information that we're capturing in the intake request shows in places like reports, how it would then flow into a project. So we'll get to take a look at all of those things. I'm going to start sharing my screen right now so we can start to take a look.
And while Mia's getting that set up, I just wanted to mention the call is being recorded. So if you want to go back and reference anything or share it with your team, you can certainly do that. Megan will be sending that out. And also, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or put your questions in the chat. We love an interactive audience.
All right. So I'm going to start, actually right before we get into intake and just looking at the overall application. Erin mentioned before that our overall accelerator, we call it PPM 360, and it is modular. So there are those different parts that Erin listed out in the slide. When we're looking at the app, right, we're looking at the home page right now, and it is where you can start out anytime that you need to do a project-related update. On the home page, you can see things like charts with roll-ups that are representing the data that we've collected across the portfolio. But on the left menu, you'll see that there are different areas that we can navigate to. So at the beginning of the project lifecycle, and for today's purposes, we are going to go ahead over to project intake. The nice part about having a menu like this is that anything I want to do related to the project, I can get to from this one screen. So if I want to create the project intake form, or if I want to go ahead and review something that's been assigned to me, I can get to all of those items here, as well as then looking at the project that gets created. So we'll start looking at the project intake. And what we'll see is that we've got a couple of different ways that this is set up. This menu can always be collapsed and hidden if we need more space. But when we look at this, we'll get to see that there is this gallery page here. And the gallery is where we get to see the existing requests. Before we actually create a request together, I just do want to make really clear that we're looking at one example today, right? But our pre-configured solution, part of the beauty of it is that it's really quick for us to install, and it's also really easy for us to customize. So when we look at this example, right, it's got this color scheme that can be updated. It's going to have certain fields and certain stages. All of those things are items that we would customize for you. If you're not at that point where you know what customizations you need yet, we do have an out-of-the-box baseline solution that's based on best practices, so that would be a really good starting point. Now, when we look at this example, if we're looking at the gallery, we'll see first that, it is personalized. Your logo would be up here, your company colors would be applied here as well. And based on who's logged in, you might see different things. I'm an admin in the system, so I see some admin controls, but I'm also somebody that's set up to possibly be an approver. So I'll see all the requests in the system. If I am just, a regular person who's going to submit an idea, I might have more of a different view. So the takeaway here in the gallery is that even what you see when you log in based on your user profile can be customized so that you're seeing exactly the information that you're interested in. In the gallery, we can also expand these items. And if we want to see more details about these at this level, we can. And then, of course, if we wanted to open up an existing request, there's an option to do that as well. What we're going to do today is we're going to create a new request. So there's a new request button here on the top right. And what we'll see, the formatting of this intake request form is that there are different pages listed here on the left side. And then in the main content area, this is where we'll start to actually fill in all of the data related to our request. The thing to keep in mind as we go through this example is that we would talk with you about what fields you want to see. So changes are possible here. And then different ways that the data kind of acts, those are up to you also. So in this example, you can see that some items are pre-filled. It knows that it's me requesting this and it sees the date is today. So it's auto-filled those. Things like guidance text here, like the best practice to avoid special characters, those can all be baked in to help the requester know what's expected of them. When we are putting together a form like this with you, a big part of what we want to do is make sure that we are thinking about this from a couple of different perspectives. At this point, when we're thinking about the requester, we need to make sure that we're not requesting anything of them that is too foreign, right? And if we are asking them for something that they may not have, we don't want to do anything like make that a required field, like these here with the asterisk. We also will go with you and just talk about what information is needed in order for this to be routed to the correct approver and what's needed for that approver to make an informed decision about whether this should become a project or not. So essentially here, we're laying the groundwork for the future project. The request type field here is pretty special. With this, if we have different types of projects, we can start to identify that here. Just looking at this list, right? A marketing campaign may have very different needs than an IT project. So based on what we select here, that can define the type of project that's created. We're going to go with a standard project, which is going to have more of the standard PMBOK project schedule as a template. If we know information about a project sponsor or who the project manager will be or anything like that, we can add those fields in here. And what's nice about this, not only are we laying the groundwork for the project and helping the approver to decide what should happen, whether this should become a project or maybe enter into the backlog or something like that, but we're also entering this data here that can carry over and display into the project once it's created. Essentially, as the requester, what we do is we just work our way through these different tabs. So we filled in some of the general request information, and now we're going to move into the project details. Before I do that, does anybody have any questions about anything we've seen so far? All right, so then I'll move on to the next tab. Oh, Ingrid.
Yeah, I just want to confirm everything that I'm seeing is customizable in terms of the names of the data fields. And when we were looking at the previous screen, the different statuses of the intake.
That is absolutely correct.
Great. But we can't do that ourselves.
I'm sorry, repeat that last part?
We can't do it ourselves. We need somebody like you to do it for us.
So that's a good question, because in the beginning, when we start an implementation, we gather requirements for you so that we can get you started in a good place. After that, we do include training with each implementation. So if you wanted to go in and maybe you get feedback after a while that location's not really helpful, or maybe location A, B, C, and D are not helpful, you want other locations in there, you will know how to make those changes after that training. If you wanted to do something fancier, you can choose whether you need our help for that or not.
Great, thank you.
Sure. And for all of these things, everything that we deploy as part of our apps, they all work in that similar way, right? We'll do requirements gathering to get you off to a good start, but it is natural that as you start to use something, you'll get feedback from the team about different drop-down values or different field names. So with the training that we'll provide, you'll be able to make a lot of those changes. But if there is something that maybe you don't feel comfortable making or something you have a question about while you're making those changes, we do also offer support, right? So you would be able to reach out to our support desk and get the guidance you need there. All right, we're going to go over to the project details tab. And this is more about, what this project is going to look like. So we can identify what our proposed start date is going to be. We can put in what our duration might be, or maybe what our planned go live is supposed to be. For now, I'll just go ahead and put in a proposed end date using the calendar here. If we know a budget, we can enter this in. Notice we spend a lot of time just making sure that if there's something that the requester doesn't or may not know, we won't make that required so that it doesn't stop them from submitting their idea. Okay. And then the next page is for the scoring. So in the slides, there was reference to using business drivers to generate a priority score. And that's what we do on this worksheet. So this is one example, right? And typically what we'll do is talk with you about what your business drivers are. So when it comes to this, sometimes people are capturing, a combination of things like t-shirt sizes and difficulty and duration to then kind of score these and then use that for prioritization. But here in these examples, one of the main takeaways is that we try to have something that is fairly descriptive, right? If we just have good, bad, great, everybody's going to put in something and score it all with great. But if we have this, it really helps to guide the person filling this out so that we get more of an accurate response. This environment that I'm showing you right now, this form, we use for demos all the time. So what we added here is just a numerical value for each score. And you'll see that as I enter in the scores, the priority score value just adds these up. So in this example, that's great. But in real life, if you needed to have something like an average value or a weighted average, maybe some of these are more important than others, then we could set it up that way. So any scoring criteria can be added in here just with a simple formula. The last tab that we have here is for attachments. Sometimes, no matter what fields we add here, there might be some supplemental information that's really helpful when it comes to making the decision about this project. And it might be something that's useful when the project is created too. So what we can do here is we can attach a file. Right? So let's say that we've got a formal project charter that we're going to attach to this. A lot of times the information from a project charter is what people use to drive what fields we include here. So we'll upload this file or attach this file here. And that way, when someone's reviewing this to see whether they should approve or not, they'll be able to view this. One thing that tends to happen quite a bit is that, we might start filling out this form and then something happens. Maybe we get an IM that we need to answer, or maybe we realize we're running late for a meeting. What we can do is save this as a draft. So we try to include confirmation for each step here as we're working through these. But now what we'll see is this webinar intake that we created together on our gallery list. We'll see the information that's entered in so far. And then when we look at the status here, we'll see it's in the draft state. You'll see here that since I'm an approver, my list here is pretty long, right? So part of what we do to accommodate that is we add the most recent items typically to the top. And then there's also a search feature. So if I know some or all of a name of a request, I can start to type that in here. Or I could use one of the drop-down values so that, we're all using that to focus in. And these can be layered, right? So if I know a couple of these different criteria, then that's enough for me to get started. All right, and then there's an account here too that makes it really easy. And a reset button if you do have multiple filters there. So that comes in really handy if you need to step away and maybe confirm something or take care of some tasks that are assigned to you. And what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and open this back up. We'll edit this. And the next thing that we'll do is submit this form. When we click on submit, we get the confirmation that our request was successfully submitted. And what we'll start to see on the gallery is that this section here will start to be updated. So you can see for some of the previous ones on the list that they've been approved and the project is created. And there's even a link here to the project. So if I'm checking on this list and this happens to get approved while I'm sitting on this page, I could access the project from here. But for now, what we want to talk a little bit about is the intake approval process. So far, we've seen the form. We talked about some of the flexibility there with the fields and the different values there that we typically would customize that for you based on your organization's needs. There are some other parts of that form that we didn't necessarily talk about, but I'll just summarize pretty quickly. it is possible to do things like conditional formatting, right? So if we have a certain department that's selected, that might mean that there's a subset of fields we need to capture. So if there's anything like that where we choose, I think for this one we chose the IT department, if there are some IT department specific fields, we can have those show up as soon as the IT department is selected. So there are all kinds of fun things like that that we can do as part of this process. All right, so before I go into the approval part, does anybody have any questions about what we've seen so far? All right, so the approval section of this, we use Microsoft's Power Automate app for that. Just a quick note, I don't know if I pointed this out before, but at the top here, you can see that we're in Power Apps, right? This is also a Canvas Power App here, and that's part of Microsoft's Power Platform. Another part of Microsoft's Power Platform is Power Automate, which is used for workflows. So the brilliant part about Power Automate is that we get to detail out the approval process step by step. So if we are building out that process for you, what we'll typically do is a couple of things. We'll talk with you about how the approvers are going to be identified. And then we'll just walk through what should happen after the point that somebody submits a project. So once somebody clicks on submit here, what the system will do through that Power Automate flow is it'll look to see who the approvers should be, and then it will contact them. There are options to have the approval come through in email or also through Microsoft Teams. So kind of the two places where a lot of people spend a lot of time with collaborating with the team. And what we can do is we can define what exactly that email looks like, the subject line, the body, all of those different parts. We can also define what the approval options are going to be. So it may be that every time a request is submitted, the approvers have the option to approve or reject. They may also want some information, like they might want an option to request more information from the submitter. Maybe one of the fields that was filled in wasn't exactly, a great description, like our project description here, right? So if we did need to request more information or give the ability to request more information to the approvers, we can build that into the approval process. Some people have things like, add to pipeline or place on hold. Maybe they want to receive that request and then, put it into queue for prioritization. So those are all some pretty good options. Another thing is, remember, I'll open this back up. Remember when we were looking at project details and we put in details like the project start and the proposed end? Part of what we might need to use or to decide what we're going to do with this request, whether we create a project or not, is to look at Power BI. If we look at our menu here, there is a link to the Power BI reports here, and there's one specific Power BI report that I want to bring your attention to. In this tab, I already have open the Power BI report pack. We have a Power BI report pack that comes with PPM 360. And what we'll see here is a request dashboard. So all of those requests that were submitted or entered in, those roll up and show on this report. Now, we'll start to look more at things from the approver's perspective in a moment when we look at the approval options in the email and in Teams. But part of what we need to make a decision sometimes is to see where this potential new project can fit in with the rest of the projects in our portfolio. So if we look at this one, we can, analyze this a little bit. If there's anybody that's not familiar with Power BI, it is very interactive. So if we wanted to look at requests by project sponsor and see things that I'm the sponsor on, we can just click directly into the chart and see the details at the bottom update here. There are different filters on each page that we can use to zero in on specific data also. And what we'll start to see at the bottom in this table are the details about the different projects that we've entered in. You can interact with the table as well and do some sorting here. So lots of different options, but the Power BI reports give some great ways to check in on that. With the start and finish date that we identified on the request, also, we can look at a report page like the portfolio timeline. This will tell us where we are today, and then it'll also tell us for the projects that are in our system now, where they are, right? We can see the timeline for these projects and also who the project manager is. So one important thing about starting a new project, we'll need to know who the PM is going to be. Looking at this chart, we can see that Amita maybe is a little busy around this time. We can see that that Shivanjali and Neil have a lot on their plates as well. So this can help us to really start to make some of those decisions. Okay. Like I was saying before, this is one example scenario. If we needed to do something more, like check for resources that are part of a specific role, we can start to capture information about which roles are needed for the project on that intake request. And there are some resource level reports that we can use to then see which resources are available. All right, so all of this kind of ties together in these different ways. We submitted this webinar intake request together. Now I'm going to just show you my email inbox. In this scenario that we're going through today, it's a little bit unique because I'm the requester, and then I also set myself up as the approver. So we'll get to see this from those two perspectives. As the requester, I do get confirmation that the request that I submitted was submitted for approval, and then they can also notify me when the status changes. So that way the requester is kept in the loop and kept informed. They get to know if the request was approved and a project was created, or if it was rejected or placed on hold, depending on whatever options you select. We also do try to include links back to the request here. That way, you know, it's not that you have to click someplace completely different to get to that request and review it. And then here, as the approver, this is the email I get requesting me to review that request and then take action on it. So again, there's a link to the request here. Some of our customers like to have key fields from the request displayed in the email, so that's possible too. Power Automate allows us to detail out what text should display here, what the subject line should be, and which fields are going to display here. Power Automate also helps us with the different options. In this example, we just have approve and reject, but remember, things like on hold, pipeline, request more information, those could all be added here. For today, I'm just going to go ahead and approve. Typically, reject for us will end the workflow, so it would notify the requester and then, you know, stop everything. But it's much more exciting for our webinar if we approve this and get a project that gets created. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in a comment here, and then submit. Clicking submit here would actually go ahead and take care of the next step, which is actually to create this project. Before I click submit, I want to look at one other thing that I see as the approver, and that's Teams. In Teams here, in the activity section, we can see here that I was also notified in Teams that there's a request ready for my review. So there's a link here to view the request. I can add in comments, and then I can reassign from here. I can also reject or approve, so those same options are here too. One thing that is really important that I want you to kind of note here is that when we have kind of the same thing in two different places, right? We don't need to act on it in two places. If I go ahead and approve and then submit here, it's also going to update what we're going to see on this request in Teams, okay? So now when we look at this in Teams, we can see that this one was already approved, right? So there are a couple places where, you know, you'll be able to be notified in more than one place, but just know that we always use the same data source in both of those places. So you don't need to, you know, make updates in both. And then the final part of this approval workflow that I'll show is back again from the requester's perspective. Because this request was approved, we get a confirmation that this was approved and that the project will be created. And then we also see the comment added by the approver. One thing that we typically also add here would be a notification for the project manager of the new project, right? And that email that they get will also include a link to the project itself and to the request. So if I'm the project manager on a new project and I receive that notification, I'll be able to use a link in the email to navigate over to that new project and then start taking a look around and doing all the planning. So, are there any questions about the approval process that we just looked at from either one of those perspectives, the requester or the approver? All right. So as we were working through those steps.
Mia, we do have
Oh.
one question. Does the request have an audit record?
Oh, that's a really good question. It does. So kind of behind the scenes here, something that we would typically show for the administrators is a log of what's happening with this request, right? So things like we can see who last modified. It's also great for admins to have that type of access if there's a change that needs to be made. So there is a list that exists that way, just, on the back end. When we do the training, when we train admins, we do cover this intake app so that you can make those, changes that we talked about to the fields and things like that, but also we'll show you where that list is and how to work with it. So that was a really good question. Were there any other questions out there? It's kind of hard for me to see the chat, so just let me know if there are.
I think that's it so far, Mia. Thanks.
All right. So as we were going through that approval process, notice that this little indicator at the top here started to fill in, right? So as this was approved, this one filled in, and then when the project was created, this got here. There are a couple of different workflow steps. So it looks like the project is creating, and then there is a refresh here so that you can kind of keep an eye on this. If I were the requester, and I wanted to just kind of see how things were going, this is one way that I could see, aside from the emails that we just looked at. With this, we can now see that the project was officially created. From here, there is a link over to the project. So I'll just click on that. And, this session today is more focused on Intake 360 and the intake process. But I think it is also important to kind of see the results of what we filled out on that intake form and how they show up in the project. This project that we created, when we were looking at the intake form, remember that there was a request type that I selected, and we selected a standard project with, a standard PMBOK schedule template. So we'll see that as part of this project. We'll also see that some of the information that we filled in on the request form will carry over into the project. So as we start to look at these different tabs, we'll start to see some of those and some of the information from the request. In the project, there is a project governance workflow. So we're, of course, starting out at the very beginning here. There are different tabs that have different project data. So as we're working on a project, we'll enter in the status, keep up to date with the financials if we have those. The tasks, this is where we'll get to see our schedule and be able to make updates and assignments. So all of this is preset here because I chose that standard project type. When we do requirements with you in the future, what we will do is talk with you about what schedule template you use, if any, right? It's not necessary that you have a schedule template that automatically shows like this one, but it is a nice head start. From here, the PM can go ahead and delete tasks or modify this template any way they need to. They can start to add new tasks and then start making their assignments. But it sure is nice to start out a new project with these tasks already here. You can see the start date is based on the date the project was created. There's a start date field that we can use to drive this too. And because the dependencies are here, everything falls into place. And it's a really nice way to start out. We can also set this up so that if there were attachments on the intake form, that those attachments will show here on the Attachments tab in the project. So these are all great ways to get started. And kind of the last thing I'll mention about the data that carries over from intake into the project is that this information is editable, right? So it is meant to truly be a starting point, whether it's a field on any of these tabs or a task on the schedule. We can just use those to start out with based on what was entered in on the request, and then we can go ahead and make the changes that we need in accordance to our project. All right, so we've covered quite a bit. I'm really interested to know both what your questions are, if there are any, but also to know what your feedback is about this. Is there anything that you expected to see today that we didn't talk about?
We just brushed the surface like we talked about, so there's a lot more in the lifestyle, the life process of the program that we can help fill in any gaps.
Yes. And Ingrid, I see your hand up again.
Yes, I'm very excited, and thank you so much for a great presentation. I'm part of a small team of 2 people at Queen's University. We're the business relationship management team, and a big part of our role is managing the intake process. And we have a fairly mature process, so we're lucky. We've got a defined and approved business process, and we've got an intake form. But so far, we've been pretty low tech. Our intake form is a Word document. And then luckily we know how to use Excel because we're not very high-tech people, me and my partner. But we know how to use Excel, so we've been able to track our work on Excel and create all sorts of reports from that. So I was just wondering, like, I don't know what the future holds for us in terms of using this product, but if we were to move forward, what do you recommend to clients who, since 2019, we've been doing our work and we probably have about 300 intake forms. What do you recommend to clients? Do you recommend that's the old world, start fresh from today with this system? Or is there a way to, because what you showed us, the screens that have to be filled out, the data fields, like some of that actually already without customization would map very nicely to our intake form. So is there, I don't know if there's a way to take a Word document and upload it, data map it nicely into this system so that we could keep that historical record.
Yes, such a good question. And thanks so much for sharing the background about where you are right now. I'm sure that other people on this call can relate, right? A lot of customers that we start working with are using tools like Word and Excel to manage these processes. And when it comes to maintaining your historical data, we would rarely, recommend that you just kind of start fresh, right? We want to make sure that you get to keep everything that you need. And part of what we include in some of our projects when there is historical data to move over, and this is true for intake requests, but also for projects, right, is that we do focus on migration a lot too. We've developed even an in-house migration tool that is really exciting. It's kind of like a wizard, right? Where you're choosing what kind of file type you want to export from, and then, what fields you want to capture, and then we can bring those in pretty quickly. But we do have migration plans that we propose for each customer. We typically talk with you a little bit more about what you have, what format, what you want to carry over, right? Data mapping is also a big part of that. One of the things that we see also with people that are using things like Word and Excel, right? Low tech, like you said, but this is also, it's the whole Power Platform aims at being easy to adopt, right? Low code or no code. So even then, being able to maintain a list like this when you're used to using Excel, it's not going to be that difficult, especially because you'll have us there to train you.
Right. And if I can, oh, somebody else has a question. I was just going to ask about reports, but
Yes.
Given that this connects with Power BI, I'm assuming that any report that I'm currently pulling from Excel, I would be able to pull using Power BI.
Yes. So typically, as long as we've got the data we can, use that to pull into Power BI, right? So if you have Excel data that, we import into the system and then, use it in those reports, that could work out great. And then, if you have Excel data that you want to report on that's outside of here, we can talk about that too.
Great. Thank you.
Ingrid, I'll
Sure.
go ahead and send you some examples of our report pack reports so that you can have it to look at. And along with this recording, I'll send it.
Great. Thank you so much.
And then Teresa?
Hello. I just had a question. Do any of your clients use this for smaller scale projects? So I manage a team of business analysts.
Mhm.
And similar to the last person that was talking, we have like business engagement partners, business relationship managers, and not every piece of work or that goes through our intake process is a huge project that
Mhm.
needs a PM or whatever. It's a smaller scale, like I need a new report created or I need a new field added in the screen somewhere, things like that, where the BA manages that work. And actually right now we're looking at revamping our intake process. We use ServiceNow, we use Azure DevOps, QuickBase. We have like multiple areas where we're kind of entering the same data multiple times.
Uh-oh.
I didn't know. Yeah. It's a lot of redundancies. So we're trying to
Yes.
figure that out. But I didn't know if folks use this on that smaller scale, and is there a way to document business requirements in here some way?
Right. So there are a couple of different options there. With this, I'm going to just open up a blank form so we can look at one part of this. With the request type, right? Some of these are, bigger projects, like an IT project is going to be pretty big, standard too. But some of these, like marketing campaign, this one is just going to create a team in Microsoft Teams so that collaboration can happen there. It might be a team that creates with a planner board so that you can track the tasks there. So there are some options like that if you want to use this as a starting point. This could also be, where the full life cycle takes place, right? So I guess let's talk about maybe what those different options are. Let's say the first one is that your full life cycle for this project could be handled in this area, right? Another option is that we create more of a specific project. It could just be a team with a planner board that's already set up with templates that your team can use. Another option is that we could create a project that shows up in this projects area. And with the projects in this area, they can be set to be very simple, okay? I'll try to show one quick example. We do have some customers that are, running full projects. They need a whole workflow phase, right? They need all these tabs here to track changes and decisions and all these things. We also have customers that, need something a lot lighter. So I do want to quickly show this light project form. This one is more streamlined. And this is, like I was saying earlier, this is one example, right? We can talk with you about what exactly you need to see and then make sure that we're tailoring this so that you just see those parts that are going to be applicable. This one has the tasks on a schedule. And, here, maybe what the good thing to do would be to start from scratch with your schedule and just build it, the tasks that you need. And it might just be, one or two high-level tasks, right? It all depends on whether you need to make assignments and what you want to see in your reports later on. So there are a couple things to consider, but I hope that what I'm conveying here is that you do have some options to kind of keep it light.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. These are really good questions. Does anybody else have any? Ron.
Yes, hi. So can you put a request through as a subset of a existing project? So it's like a mini project, but we want to connect it to a bigger project.
Yes.
And also back to the Azure DevOps, could you show me a little bit about how that can be tied into this?
All right.
Thank you.
So, sure. Sorry, I remember the Azure DevOps part. Repeat the first part of your question for me.
Yeah, a project that's part of another project.
Oh,
So,
yes, yes.
yeah.
Okay, so with the fields that we have in here, one way that we could accomplish that is by adding a field where you can add that type of relationship starting at this point. One thing that's really nice about that is in the projects area, and I'm just going to open up a project here. In the projects area, there are fields also that represent relationships, right? So parent project, for example, right? This will show me a list of the existing projects and kind of give me a chance to tie these together, right? So in that way, you know, the information that we enter in on that request can carry over and display here. And the list of projects that we have on this main projects page, that can also be used to feed into the field that we were just talking about on the request form. So that way, when you're looking at the request form and you need to choose a related project, you're choosing from the list of active projects, let's say, right? And then when we're in the project, not only can we continue that relationship here with a field kind of like this parent project, but also kind of adjacent to this, there are program and portfolio fields here that will allow you to tie a project with a specific program or portfolio, right? That's a little bit different than what you mentioned, but I think it's a nice kind of side note to put in at this point too. And what we'll see here when we
that's
click
where
on
I
this.
was going. Yeah.
Okay.
So part of
Well,
the big encompassing project, we have a lot of subset projects that feed into that. And then the
right.
tasks. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then with this, right, I gotta just throw this part in here that when we choose one of these programs, right, if we go over to, actually first, I just want to show you, when I click enter here, there's a list of different programs that exist, right? I'm going to choose this 2022 one, even though it's way past 2022. And when we go over to the program list here, all those programs that I just saw when I clicked enter are what's listed here. And with the programs, you get to define out your programs and the portfolios too. But what's great here is that you can track data at the program or portfolio level. So now we're naming our program, we have a state, a priority for it, an owner and all that stuff, the description and business case. So we're able to track data at the program level, but we can also use the program to view a roll-up of all the different project information of the projects in this program, right? So these fields that we're using to identify these relationships, they become really powerful because not only do we get to view all this program level data here, right, and see the roll-ups, even for financials, all the roll-ups are there. We can view all the projects and get an idea of health-wise, you know, where all these are. I think this AAA review is the one we were just looking at, but we can then access the projects. So if we see that something is red in the overall health and we're concerned, we can quickly get over to the project from that page. So that's one part that's powerful, but then also all of this rolls up into Power BI as well. So if we need to look at information related to a specific program or portfolio, there are reports that focus on those levels, and then we can also use those as filters. Okay. And then the other part of your, actually, before we go to the other part of your question, anything else related to this?
Yeah, if you take a step back to the intake process, can you build the relationships right there? Say this request is part of this bigger portfolio program. And so the person doing the approval can see the context of what you're asking for.
Yes, we can do that. Fairly recently, I think the last project that I went live with, actually, we did have a field there that looks up to the list of the programs, right? So then they were able to choose those.
Okay.
So yeah, that kind of relationship we can start to define here.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. The other part was about Azure DevOps and how these can interact. So one of the project types that we'll see here, or request types, is for Agile projects that we are going to run in DevOps, right? If we choose this as a project type, what will happen is that this PPM 360 app will integrate with DevOps. And what we do in that scenario is we talk with you a little bit more about the requirements needed for that, because we'll be able to tie over certain information, right? So we'll just need to talk more about what information you want to sync over between this and Azure DevOps.
Yeah,
we-
things like decision documents, those type of things. Where does it live? That's wrong.
Yeah, so you can choose, right?
Okay.
With those, that type of sync, right? We can choose if it's going to sync, hourly, daily, and then we can talk about what information you want to have, just to make sure that we've got all the field mapping laid out for you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Megan, not sure if you can see the chat, but someone also asked, can it sync with Jira as well?
Yeah, so you know what? I think we should maybe just take this opportunity to talk a little bit about integrations, right? Because integrations are an important part of our work here. We're already integrating things, just through this area. And this also integrates with Teams, right? Like anything that I'm doing here, I could also do from within Teams. But a lot of our customers do have integrations that are important for other parts of the project. Financials is a big one, right? For those Agile projects, sometimes those need to sync with another system. So I guess long story short, with a lot of the more popular apps, there are existing connectors. We also have people on our team that build connectors, right? So we can check in with the API of what you're using for something as, popular as Jira. That's pretty straightforward. But we do have multiple apps that we can integrate with. And then again, that's all stuff that we would want to talk more about when we start the process of requirements gathering, even before then, just to make sure that we're on the same page as far as what data you want to capture, which you want to move like one-way or two-way sync, and how often that should sync. Even for some of our customers, the intake process might happen in a different application. We can integrate with other apps for those purposes too, so that something is approved and then it comes over as a project in this system. And that way it's available for all of your reporting and things like that. So integrations, yeah, it's a really important topic for us.
Any more questions?
Brad.
Hi there. Just a quick question. I know you mentioned that a lot of the project stuff here, I don't know about the intake part, but the project stuff is built on top of Project for the Web. And I was just wondering if any of that will be affected later this year with the announcements that Microsoft has made regarding Project for the Web, their new unified project experience with Planner and Project Online, that kind of stuff.
Yes. So I'll try to be quick because we just have a couple minutes left, but everything that we're seeing here, right? When we look at the homepage and we're looking at this menu here, the timesheets, the intake, projects and portfolios, the resource stuff, the Power BI reports, this is all part of PPM 360. And just like you said, it's kind of, overlaid. It overlays the Project for the Web out-of-the-box tool from Microsoft. So what we'll see when we look at tasks, this is essentially what the out-of-the-box tool from Microsoft is. Not the schedule template that we've added in here, but more the different views and things like that, right? For anybody that may not be aware, Microsoft is planning on merging together this product, Microsoft Project, with Microsoft Planner, right? And what that'll do is that when I assign a task to, right, this is completed already, but let's say I assign this task to Amita. what would happen after that integration is that Amita would be able to go into Planner, right, and see her task there. And then she would be able to update her task from within Planner and, you know, keep working without necessarily having to open up each project and make updates or anything like that. The whole goal is to bring everything together into one place so that when you're working, you can go down your to-do list that's going to have your flagged emails all in one place, your personal to-do items that you create for yourself, and then also the tasks that are assigned to you from projects. So this will be affected along with it, but in the intended way from Microsoft and in a pretty good way. The amazing part about all that too is that, you know, Amita doesn't need any license or anything like that to update the task that I'm pretending to assign to her here. She would be able to go right in through Teams or right in through Planner, maybe even through Outlook where there's to do, and make those updates there. We are planning, you know, to have more webinars and blog posts on that topic as Microsoft continues to make those changes. So please stay tuned. We're really excited to talk about those.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. We really appreciate your time today, and we hope to talk to you soon.